Welcome, friends. The shoe mic is on my desk. The bottle is next to me, and I am ready for tonight's review. Tonight's review is the infamous Wild Turkey 101. This needs no introduction. It's a very famous Kentucky bourbon. And it has a reputation of being a bit of a rot gut bourbon, and that's somewhat unfair because while it is rather affordable in this day and age, this particular bottle only costs $21, and it lacks some nuance, I find. It's still drinkable, and it's still interesting to drink. So, in terms of explaining how it's interesting to drink, I have here a bottle, a glass I poured that's just straight, neat bourbon whiskey. Of course, it's a nice, almost very dark orange amber. And here's one where I added a small dash of water. You can kind of see it's a little bit lighter colored. So it's a bit more, got a bit more of a yellow tinge to it. And you'll find out why I did this in a little bit. I also have water too, because that's something that's about 50.5% alcohol. You're going to need something to clean your palate in between testing two different things. So let's go and do the nose right now. So one thing I find is it's very hard to nose it neat, because the alcohol just goes in, you know, you get a little bit and then the alcohol hits you and it's all gone there. It's fairly thick too, you can see it. I don't know if you can see it here. No, you can't see the legs, but it's almost just hanging there. It's very vanilla, caramel, just before the alcohol heat hits you, there's spice. Now let's try the water one. What's interesting here is that the caramel, I only added a very small amount of water, so it's only about, like I'd say, about 90 proof or 85 proof at this point. But the nose has changed quite a bit in that, you know, that a lot of the caramel sweetness has virtually disappeared, and instead, next to the vanilla is woodiness and the sort of lemony citrus. Also, I'm probably going to be really drunk after I finish this, because like I said, this is pretty high octane stuff. Whew. Bracing. A lot of there's a very sweet finish to it. Sweet, and a bit of the barrel finish to it, but not overwhelming. It's just sort of a slight woodiness. But this is amongst one of the sweeter bourbons that I've had that are still pretty quality. You definitely feel, definitely drinks like something that's over 50% alcohol. But even though the alcohol burn is there, you can still discern a very strong rye spiciness to it. That sort of cinnamon too, that rye, cinnamon rye just kind of emerges in the middle, and a big burst and then disappears. It's kind of mixed in with the alcohol there, so it's kind of hard to discern the burn. Definitely hints of orange, sweetened, and very sweet, very archetypical bourbon taste up front, and something of an archetypical bourbon finish. The really thing that stands out is a very spicy wryness in the middle of the palate. So let's go and try the watered version now. First, let me go and clear my palate because it's just nuked at this moment. Despite the very small addition of water, it greatly reduces the kick of it, so that it's very manageable now. And the wood is what really comes out now. But unfortunately, the sweetness has lost a lot of its dimension, in that it's just fairly neutral sweetness now. It's not really related to a caramelness or a creaminess. I have to say, despite the addition of a small amount of water, it tastes like I added a lot more water. And I know I didn't because I went and measured it. I went and made sure I added less than 10% of the original amount there. The rye is much diminished. And really, the primary note that comes out when you add the water note to it is the oakiness. It's not an unpleasant flavor, but unfortunately it's overwhelming almost everything else. There's some citrus notes and citrus top notes to it, but it's very brief, and again the oakiness sort of dominates the watered version. I have to say that I greatly prefer the unwatered version. It has much more intensity of flavor and a bit more complexity. But while it's not super complex, you're not over there, wow, you know, getting a whole bunch of angles of like, wow, honeyed notes and, you know, caramel, burnt sugar notes and what have you. It's still very drinkable, and it's still very good. And I would venture that this would make a very interesting mixer when used at the same proportions as you would a lighter bourbon, because the intensity of flavor would probably be preserved a bit better than something that's at 80 proof. So I'd say I'd give it a shot, especially for something that you would want a bit more of a spicy note to come through the bourbonness of it. Certainly it's not as spicy as a straight rye whiskey, but at this point, you know, it would be an interesting one. Plus two, it's cheap. So folks, that's tonight's review. Sorry it was blurry for most of it. My camera sucks. Cheers.